Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times of ours. And in today's episode, Benji and I take a crack at unpacking the merit of the age. You have to understand that this era is the golden era of healing. It is the time when there's an answer to all that ails us. There's a solution. There's something out there that can help us, right? And it all points back to us, and it all points back to us getting to understand ourselves on a deeper level. But we have things that can heal our bodies in miraculous ways. We have different ideas that can help us heal our minds, like different ideologies. We have different ways of healing our hearts and the pain that lies within. There's different ways of healing our spirits from that which ails us as well. So it's just kind of this wild time when it's almost like the cosmos is begging us to choose healing over suffering. And many of us continue to suffer because we haven't made that earnest decision to be a healed person. And I would encourage you to seek after healing, because it absolutely is possible for, regardless of the symptoms, whatever you're dealing with, you can find a solution for eventually if you look deep enough. We are in that time. So we unpack that this episode. I hope you enjoy. See you on the inside.
Buenos dias for all of those people out there. Buenos noches and buenos everything. Buenos everything.
This is how Benji and I survive. You got to go a little bit crazy every now and again. Because if not, where's that crazy going to go? We all have it. There's a crazy energy in us. If it goes unchecked, bunnies get hurt. It's a very specific reference to my son, who has that crazy energy, sometimes hurts animals. It's okay. It wasn't life-threatening. Just some shakes, some shakes. Put the bunny down, buddy. Just put him down.
Yeah. It's in our blood. Craziness is in our blood. Everyone.
Yeah.
Especially us.
I really want to do an episode. And if anybody's listening who's like an expert in this or knows an expert, I really want to do an entire episode about energy, because it's such a weird and fascinating topic that's why you eat. Okay, we all know, we get energy when we have food, but your food has energy in it because of photosynthesis, because the sun, because of the earth and all this, and you're inheriting that, and you turn that energy into action. It fuels your brain so you can think and all this stuff. And how that factors into sexual integrity is that for so many people, they sit all day and they're in their heads, and they get that craziness that we're talking about in their heads, and their bodies aren't burning energy. So it turns into this nasty feeling. I'm sure everybody here can listen, that you just feel so uncomfortable in your own skin. You're like, maybe you start hating yourself, but it's a really uncomfortable feeling. And it's largely due to just energy expenditure, because you don't really feel, after a really good workout, a long jog or something like that, you just want to relax and you can't think much about anything. You're just trying to breathe, right? So energy is a topic we will get into. And if anybody has any suggestions of people, or if you would like to be on the podcast, let us know. Did you hear that bird, Benji?
Yeah, I did. Be careful what you wish for. People that are into energy are not really the people you want on the podcast.
Not woo 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 doo doo, but more just like people who understand the science behind energy and how to procure it and store it and utilize it more. But let's get on to today, and I guess that has something to do with today's episode, which is, I want everybody in the world to understand that we are in the greatest era alive. And it's so easy to believe in the opposite, that this is the most difficult, brutal time ever, because there's a lot of cues for that, because our parents didn't grow up with the internet. So they didn't have to deal with every data point of negative information from around the world in real time on Facebook or whatever. They had the newspaper. I think my dad still gets the newspaper. But those things are going bye-bye, right? Now we have just real-time information. So it seems like everything's falling out of control when in fact things could never have been better. That is a weird way of saying it. Things have never been better. There's more opportunities. And this isn't like a show about optimistically talking about global politics or anything, because that's a very real, for all of our people. I was just having a conversation with somebody in Ukraine. That's serious stuff still, right? Yeah. But what I'm talking about, the angle that I'm talking about, is that there are now nothing but open doors for humanity. We are being given every opportunity to heal our bodies, our hearts, our minds, our spirits at any time. And more people are walking through those doors. And I want to talk about that because this is the golden age of healing. That was the alternative title for this podcast, is we are living in the golden age of healing, where you can heal every aspect of yourself. I was just in a hospital because I was getting my blood checked, just physical. And they have this propaganda, like this thing and I'm in Vietnam, but it was like just a looped commercial about Korea being this I think is Daegu, is like the medical capital of the world or something. And they were showing a video where they sewed a guy lost his arm in an accident in a factory, and they gave him somebody else's arm. It's the first ever time when somebody could get somebody else's arm. It's just like Dogman. I don't know if you read that.
Yes.
But just the hand. But it worked. They got the nerves, and it took a while for his body, but his own physical nerves latched on to the nerves of this other person's hand who died and donated their hand. And like, what? This is crazy. You could get somebody else's hand put on you. So let's just get into that. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, there's an entire trend right now of videos, content about how this is the most difficult, quote unquote, time in history. And I think anybody living like more than 50 years ago would have laughed at anybody that thought that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But I understand the sentiment behind that is that what they're really trying to say is that it's the most confusing time for people.
Yeah.
Especially for teens. And the trend is really really aiming at teenagers, as in this is the most, quote unquote, difficult time to be a teenager, as in there's no guidebook about how to live. There's no, previously in history, it was like you are bequeathed to you from your father and your mother certain values and standards, and that's what you believe, and there's no other option. But now we live in a time where there's, like you said, there's so many options, there's so many beliefs, there's so many possibilities that it's just overwhelming for people. People don't know how to live.
And we're also coming from a generation, especially in the West, where our parents don't even know what to believe anymore, right? So I see a lot of parents struggling with their own faith, their own identity, because when you got old in the past, you were an old person. And now there's the possibility that longevity, that you could live for longer. So middle age is now being bumped up. So you can do all sorts of stuff you couldn't do, I see like people walking on the beach here who are in their 60s and they just got a fresh new tattoo. This is not new. This is like brand new for society. Only sailors would have tattoos in the past. So that's like something a teenager would do, right? Or a sailor in the past. And now parents are like, yeah, but what does it all mean? So in that respect, we're entering a new world, and it's hard to get answers from the same sources as before. Schools used to give us all the answers. Schools clearly don't have all the answers anymore. Parents, they are sometimes a little bit, wondering themselves. So to be a member of our movement, right, is a massive advantage, because if you really see the lens to our faith, if you look at the world through the lens of our faith, I should say, you can find solid ground even when the world is shaking, because you understand this time. It's not the time of rapture. Like in some faiths, they're like, oh, here it comes. And they're kind of bracing themselves to get this elevator to heaven. But for us, it's basically the old world is dying and it's doing everything that it can to exist. Just like an animal that is dying will do anything it can to survive, right? And the old world, the old culture, the old civilization, the fallen world, we would say, is doing everything it can to stick around for as long as it can, but it's dying fast. And a new world is emerging, a new culture, and that is the Chanuguk culture, and that is sponsored by Hainun, not the organization, but the Hainun culture, the 5 virtues. So when you see life through the lens of somebody who's done the work of forming a North Star goal, and it has like some sense of what an ideal self would look like, what an ideal family would look like, to know that it's possible and that true parents open the door so that that's possible and we can just walk through that door, then it's just a matter of sticking to the work, keep on doing the work, building those 5 virtues muscles, and everything else is in place. Those metaphorical doors that I were talking about, think about physically. Any ailment has a remedy to it physically. There's nothing now, because we have Eastern philosophy, we have Western medicine, the combination can really create healing for anything. There's people that come into remission from anything. There's like, it's unbelievable, right? It's unbelievable physically that there you can identify what sickness you have. Even if it's really strange, if you spend the time, you can find healing to every issue in your physical body. That's the merit of the age. Before, like my grandma was hyperactive, so she went through shock therapy, which was traumatic for her entire life. She struggled her whole life with mental stuff because she was tortured, because she was a problematic child, right? You know what I mean? So that was 2 generations ago. That was my grandparents. Now there's so many ways of understanding. Oh, they have too much sugar. Oh, they were traumatized as a kid. Let's work through that. For anybody who listened to the David Young episode, please do if you didn't. It's about your nervous system, and basically our bodies it's a memory bank. Our body remembers trauma that maybe our brain doesn't, but we can heal that too. There's all sorts of ways of healing your body, your mind. It's crazy.
Yeah. It's really wild. I was in conversations with a few people that I've noticed this really drastic change in their lineage. You know, like I was hung with a brother whose father was, who died of some sickness and had a lot of addiction, right? This is a guy in his 20s, right? His brother I'm mentoring. And he was talking about his father, addiction, and kind of how he was raised. And I was like, do you see how exponential your lineage's growth has been just from one generation? Because your father went through that whole experience, God bless him. You're inheriting all the lessons that your father learned, right? And this guy is not resentful to his dad. He's not like, my dad's the worst. He's like respectful and understands his dad's pains and difficulties. And you inherited all of some of his, difficulties and wounds, but also you inherited the lessons that he learned at a young age, of a guy in his 20s, before he's even married, right? This guy. And I was like, it's such a beautiful, just how quickly in one generation we can resolve a lot of these issues. It's almost like after every generation, it becomes easier and quicker. If you ever watched Dragon Ball, I'm going to assume you've never watched Dragon Ball. Andrew.
Nah, dude. All I know is it's a ball made out of dragon soup.
Well, let's assume that 99% of our listeners know what Dragon Ball is. Okay.
Dangerous assumption.
So I will make the bet that the vast majority of people know Dragon Ball. All right. In our faith. So basically Goku, who's the main dude, the dad, he achieved Super Saiyan form when he was an adult. And it was very, very difficult and painful. And he had to go through so much loss and torment and training and fighting bad guys on other planets, basically, to achieve Super Saiyan form. His son, Gohan, achieved it while he was a kid, right? And some just training with his dad. And then Goku's second son, Goten, achieved it when basically he was a toddler. And he was just like, oh, I can do Super Saiyan. and it wasn't a big deal, right? And it's just like this beautiful progression of their lineage just becoming exponentially easier to achieve this form. Of course, it's a silly illustration, Dragon Ball, but it's such a beautiful thing. And like, I can even talk about stories of my own life, like my own, relationship with my parents and things that I've learned from them or inherited from them that I feel like I can't imagine, like my dad, for example, the generations of Japanese dudes that have just been raising Japanese dudes for all of my ancestors are like, half of them are just Japanese for as far as the eye can see. Like, I did one of those tests, it's just Japanese forever. And to think that it's like more or less been the same for forever. And then within one generation, we've had this dramatic change in the way that I live my life, like my practices, my state of mind, the way that I'm raising my kids, my understanding of spirituality, God. It's like a weird boastful brag, I know, but it's like, it's such a testament to this merit of the age, this era where we have true parents, we have word, we have God's word, we're able to learn stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's really honestly humbling and miraculous, because the way that I raise my kids, for example, versus the way that my father raised us, they're like completely 180-degree different, right? And it's not even like a blame thing. It's like, we are only able to do this because of the age we live in. You know what I'm saying? Like, this wasn't
Absolutely.
there weren't even ideas of like, oh, maybe you should raise your kids by like, spending more time with them or talking to them about sex and that kind of stuff. God bless my dad. He did his best. But it wasn't like a conversation to talk about this kind of stuff. But it's pretty much general, especially in our audience, like High Noon World, it's pretty generally accepted that it's a good idea to talk to your kids about sex, and that just wasn't the reality for our parents' generation.
You bring up a lot of really important points. One is, like, what true parents were talking about with lineage sounds really esoteric. It sounds really spiritual and hard to measure, that you could kind of release the pain and the patterns of your lineage by your own effort, by becoming a different person, by restoring your lineage ultimately, right? That sounds cool. And that, in the beginning, when I first heard this stuff, I was really inspired by it and I wanted to do that. But since then, science has caught up, man. Like, the idea of epigenetics is really the understanding that you can absolutely change the trajectory of all of your descendants by sorting through your own stuff before you have kids, right? So any addiction that you overcome that was very prevalent in your family makes it so much easier for your kids to overcome that same addiction. So and Gene learned this from Jay Stringer's Unwanted, this concept of metabolizing your family's junk, so that you basically take it all in, you stomach it, you take it all in and you poop out the junk and you keep the good stuff, and then you don't pass it on because you're the one that dealt with it. And how beautiful is that? But again, that's merit of the age, man. Like, I can tell for sure that I would be divorced. I know my character. I know my nature. I know how hot-blooded I can be. I would be a wreck. I would probably be an alcoholic, to be honest, if I was born probably 30 years earlier, like my dad's era. But first of all, he did a lot of work on himself, on his own purity, to make my journey easier. But also, I like getting blessed, like from a Westerner's perspective to somebody from Mongolia was not possible. There are not many cases of like people older than me in that position. It just doesn't really exist.
I will say,
because those two worlds are so different.
Yeah. Your wife is the only Mongolian person I know.
Yeah. There's like 3 million in the world. So, but the whole point is that I'm very humbled by the grace of the merit of the age, because I have tools and resources and support systems that allow me to work through stuff when they come up, so that I can enjoy my marriage instead of imploding under the pressure. And so we have these tools, like you and I I'm speaking, I have this little microphone in my hand that didn't exist 20 years ago, and we're talking on the internet through some software, which none of this existed 30 years ago, really, in any meaningful way. And and all of this, you say, well, technology is cool, but it's hurting us. Well, it can hurt us. Sorry to interject here, but I just wanted to remind you that Saturday, April 6th, we are going to be having our 24-hour podcast. It's going to be 24 different topics that we're going to be covering, and in multiple different languages. We're going to have the English chunk. We're going to have the Spanish section. We're going to have Japanese. It's going to be really good. It's really good. So if you go to highnoon.org/summit, it'll show you the schedule in great detail. Pick some topics that really interest you and dive in. And what we're doing is we're promoting you guys to have watch parties or to do this together. High Noon is all about other people. So for the first thing, we're going to have it live. So, people from all over the world will be tuning in. So there'll be that level of togetherness. But you can do watch parties. You can do all sorts of stuff so that you can comment together and laugh or make fun of me or whatever you want to do. But it's so much better together. So go to highnoon.org/summit to check out the schedule and commit to coming to at least a couple. There's going to be a wide range of topics for people in different phases of life. So we got your back. Show up. Want to see you there. Well, we can also use it to utilize the other technologies that exist. We have internal technologies that exist. In our faith is because of true parents. They opened up the doors for these technologies to exist. We started with the Industrial Revolution, which was external. But now we have, even science is now helping us to understand the internal nature of things like I was saying, epigenetics and neuroplasticity and these kind of things, helping us understand that we control our own destiny. We can absolutely, if we choose, and we can choose. But, when I wake up, I stretch. And a lot of these positions I inherited from yoga. Not a thing back, not in the West, right? But we also have this kind of merging of all sorts of different disciplines and foods and all this stuff that if you're not thriving, it's merely because of your internal choices, that you haven't decided to be a thriving human, because you can live anywhere and do anything. If you can get clear on what that looks like, your life can be very, very, very much what you dream it to be if you're willing to dream it. And the problem is that when you're stuck under addiction, we know this, you don't have access to dreams because your dreams turn into nightmares and all you are stuck with is shame, right? So you have the same merit of the age as everybody else, regardless of where you live. Even people in difficult countries are living in chanoguk in their hearts in many cases because they choose to live that way. But it really is a choice. So I know this episode and this topic could be extremely annoying to somebody who's struggling because they're like, yeah, it sounds easy. But in order to depart the old world, the old way of doing things, and to become really a citizen of Chanoguk or of this new era of health, you're going to have to shed some weight. And it's going to be a little bit of a tricky process. Benji and I both went through very tough times in our marriage when we were being torn to smithereens. We're in the old days, a form of torture was they'd strap your both arms and your legs all individually to 4 different horses. So each arm, each leg, and they'd get the horses to run in different directions. It was called, I forget what it was called, but it was basically you'd be ripped apart to pieces. And that's like emotionally and spiritually what my life felt like for probably 3 years in my marriage. And what I was doing, unbeknownst to me, was I was cleaning up so many things that I inherited from my environment, watching how my parents talk to each other and deal with arguments in a negative way, and also the stuff that exists in me in terms of my lineage, stuff that's in me. But after going through that, not just holding my breath and hoping it goes away, but talking about it, trying to find a solution and banging my head against the wall, praying like crazy, doing everything I can spiritually, having as many conversations that I can emotionally seeking healthy couples to inherit from. After, a good at least 3 years of this really painful stuff, liberation came. My wife and I are just, I don't know, really in love. And we have still difficult times, but it resolves very quickly. We just had a very wonderful, spicy argument 2 nights ago, that because stuff was storing up in me. And I was like, I got to talk about this. And we just dealt with it. And then we just started kissing and loving each other after that. It was really nice, right? But that is on the back end of transitioning from the old world to the new world. And Benji, you can speak to that too, because I know you've been through that. Can you attest to that? Can you testify?
Yeah. Well, we're talking about healing, and I think that's a touchy topic because it sounds very, like you said, esoteric, spiritual, woo-woo. But it's really what we're doing at High Noon. It's not an easy task. When we ask people to join programs, the things we ask people to do in Ascend, for example, it's not quitting porn. It's really like healing. We're healing people. And this is really like recent and raw for me, so I'll share it because in the vein and light of High Noon, I was really feeling resentment to my dad. Just like this unsettled resentment in my heart in the last few weeks, because my dad, I had all these things I wanted to do when I was a kid. Like I wanted to learn how to make a sword. I wanted to make a comic book. And I had all these things come to mind, right? And then I was like, my dad never actually tried. Like he didn't even be like, I don't know how to do that, but let's figure it out. And that's what I really wanted and needed. Like that's what we need as men. Is like, I don't know, but I'm going to help you figure it out. I'm going to sit with you, or I'm going to find somebody that can help you make a sword. You know what I'm saying? But it's kind of like, oh, I don't know. I have no idea where to start, right? And I don't blame him, right? But it was like getting to me because I was feeling like this like frustration. It's like, what? I just wanted to make a sword, like, and I don't know how to make a sword. I want to make a sword. I know it sounds childish, but I had this inner child that wants to be Aragorn, basically. And then I was noticing that with my children, I'm the complete opposite. I'm completely engaged with their creative ideas. Like as soon as my son is like, I want to make a Pokeball, we went to Lowe's, we asked the people, I was like, we're going to make a Pokeball, no matter what it takes, right? Or they want to learn how to draw something. Like they're really into drawing, so they want to learn how to use color pencils to do shading, to draw like these intricate Pokemon things, right? I was like, let's figure out how to do that. Like, I'm going to sit with you and we're going to learn this together. And then I was thinking about this because I've gone through my own process of like healing and recovery to the point where like, I don't blame my parents. I get it. Like I'm only able to do this with my kids because of the age I live in. Like it's a blessing to be where we are. But I was thinking about why is it that I swung so far in the opposite direction to the point where I don't even try to be engaging with my kids. Does that make sense? It's like,
yeah,
I don't even have to try. I just am. And I was confused. I was like, why is it that I'm like this? Why didn't I inherit the same kind of habits as my dad, where I'm just like, oh, I don't know how to do it, sorry. And at the same time, like my wife, for example, she is, God bless her, she attends to our children. This is like her number one priority in her life and her mission. She just, for the last 9 years that she's been a mom to our kids, it's always been about the kids. And she doesn't have any personal desire for anything else, right? Even to the point where I'm like, maybe you should like, do something, whatever. If you have a hobby, she's like, no, I'm good. Like that's kind of her. She's happy just to stay home, make scones. I swear to God, she's just completely happy with that kind of life. And then her mother, on the other hand, complete opposite, like always out. She left her kids at home when she was 2 years. I don't know how old, but for 2 years, her mom went on a mission trip, right, to Europe and left them at home in Japan for 2 years when my wife was a kid. And it's just really fascinating how in one generation you can swing in the opposite direction. So I was really thinking about this, and I really feel like it is really the era and the merit of being able to grow and heal ourselves to the point where we're able to inherit the things that we are either good from our parents and also leave behind the things that are unhealthy or not good.
Yeah.
Behaviors. And it's such a blessing, and it's a mature perspective, and I think a foolish perspective to say, oh, my parents are not perfect, therefore, the church is evil and your parents are whatever, right? People do that. They conflate everything. They say,
Yeah.
God is not real, therefore, whatever. Therefore, I should watch porn every day, all day. So it's like, I haven't really pinpointed, to be honest, but I know that through my blessing, in particular with my wife, through going through that and that dark tunnel and seeing the other side, that I know that that's how my heart has been recovered and healed, to the point where I don't have this like resentment or anger. I just am a really engaging father for some reason. And it's just because I've recovered that part of me that really needed to be recovered, And I think it's in relation with, it's really ultimately it's God. I've experienced God through my wife, through uncle figures like brothers, through people in my life, and I've restored a lot of my relationship with my dad over the years too, to the point where I just feel more whole and healed, so that I can be more myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really important. We represent so much, the past and the future. But guys and gals, please understand that, like he was saying, participation is required in this. And, stuff like trauma, this really is also humbling to me, is that we didn't understand trauma, right? We didn't understand individual trauma or collective trauma. And now that we do, we can see that it takes even sometimes generations for to heal from a war or from a difficult situation on a societal level, right? When you have an entire society that experiences death like war, it takes a long time for them to get that out of their system and to not be reacting on some level to the past, right? But it requires healing and to kind of go towards the light. And that's what we're asking is, maybe you had your own personal trauma or difficulty in your own life. And the only way to kind of heal that is to go towards the light and to seek after help. But the cool part of this era is that there's an endless array of modalities to heal anything you need to heal. The hard part is that there are so many ways and it's hard to find your way. And everybody actually needs to create their own path. You need to experiment with different things. And I don't mean to go off and start doing ayahuasca. I think that's a bunch of nonsense. That's what all the tech guys are doing as a workaround to developing genuine faith, is to just go straight to God without, humbling yourself or anything. It's doesn't yield, I think, really realistic results, because people are like, oh, I met God. It's like, okay, but did you change your habits? Did you change the way that you see the world? Did you change how you love yourself and the world around you? So the other thing, though, is to experiment means, like, I was afraid to start meditating back in 2016 or around that time, or 20, whatever it was, that I really got into it, because I felt like, well, I'm a prayer guy, and if I start meditating, is that bad? Can I bring God with me when I meditate, or am I going into some weird metaphysical state that I'll get lost?
Adultery.
Yeah. But I just went down that road because there's a lot of weird stuff in that world. I just didn't want to. There's a lot of. I heard a testimony from somebody who's deeply entrenched in that whole woo-woo world, and they're like, if you go to these 7-day silent retreats and these ayahuasca ceremonies, it's always basically single people. It's people who are really kind of lonely and desperately looking for meaning in a way that they can preserve their loneliness and their singleness, rather than resolving the fact that they're single because they're afraid or hurt or whatever. So those things get resolved in couples, in relationships, right? Through family and friends and all that. All I'm saying is that if you have pain in your life, physical pain, you don't have to live with it. There's a way out of that, healing it. and sometimes it's complicated. I've undergone so many different therapies in my life for different ailments. I thought I had brain cancer when I was 20. So I got a CAT scan or a CT scan, and I was fine. They're like, no, you're totally healthy. I was like, well, I don't feel healthy. So I went down this long road. I had something called matrix repatterning done, which is some German modality. I've had acupuncture. I've had colonics, like everything you can imagine, in the name of being as healthy as possible. So we have access to them, but a lot of them are a waste of time for you. So all I'm saying is that, high noon is a massive part of this, but high noon is really, it's the community where you can practice the culture, the high noon culture, which is the 5 virtues culture. But in your own personal time, to seek after healing and know that it's possible for whatever ails you, be it physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, there is a door open for you, absolutely, that will help you in the process of healing. And you can't get everything from high noon. Like Benji and I cannot give you nutritional advice. I mean, we could, but it would be garbage advice, because we don't know you and we don't know nutrition on that level. But there's so much, like, nutrition factors into a lot of reasons why people watch porn. Think about that. Think about how many people hate their bodies because they eat too much junk food, and that makes them have a negative impression of themselves. They let themselves hate themselves long enough that they want to escape themselves, and they do that through porn. Now, all of a sudden, your food choices and porn are connected. But also, how many people have just chronic headaches? They don't know how to deal with it, so they just watch porn and masturbate because at least that's a break from the headaches, right? But maybe your headaches are coming from diet or lifestyle choices or whatever. So to be a thriving individual is on the table for each and every one of us. And high noon is the place to kind of bring your results and to bring your problems, to work through them in community. But we don't have all of the answers in terms of, we're not acupuncturists or whatever. That's for you to kind of discover and go down that road. But just to know that we live in the era when there's no reason to suffer for anybody. The only reason is it's the habit of the old world, that we cause other people to suffering, right? That we allow ourselves to suffer, to go through prolonged suffering. This is all just old stuff that we need to let go of in order to kind of make way for this new world where we're all thriving. And our focus is on helping each other thrive. So yeah, that analogy of doors being open is just really, really important, because whenever you feel like down and out, or like there's no hope for me, there absolutely is hope, regardless of what you're going through, because God's prepared this era to be one in which He's trying to expedite the process of everybody ushering into this new world as quickly as possible.
Yeah. It's hard when you're down to see that light. I know it's really hard. So maybe I hope that people listen to this and they can have some confidence that, you're not the only people. You're not the only one in the world that's lost in a jungle. I was talking with a guy today who was really feeling rather hopeless in his sexual integrity journey. And then, because we have these mentoring calls, and one of the questions that we like asking is like, do you think you have hope? Like, do you think you can change? And he was like, he thought about it for like a good 10 seconds. He was like, I don't think so. Like, I don't know. I don't know, honestly, if I can quit this. Right. And so to him, I was just like, well, it's because you're in a dark place right now. And when you're in a dark place, when you're down, when you're consumed by shadows, it's really, really hard to see the light, because all you see is your shadows.
Yeah.
That's it. And so what's the solution to healing? There's only one way to get rid of a shadow, actually. Well, there's 2 ways, technically. You can douse it with more shadows, or you can shed light on it. And people that are feeling really, really down usually tend to douse themselves with more shadows and consume more porn, because they feel so shameful about their porn habit. You know what I'm saying? But
yeah,
the healing starts when you have give and take. That's how we start experiencing God. That's how we start experiencing love and grace, is we have give and take with the right people, and we shed light. And then when you start doing that, it's like you clean your soul and you have a blank slate. That's what we talk about, the high noon living. And then as soon as you have like a little particle dust show up, like a little mark. You notice it, the broken window effect, right? It's like a building that has a bunch of broken windows. You're more likely to chuck a rock at it. But if it's a clean, pristine wall or window, nobody's going to chuck a rock at that because it's clean. And so when you clean your soul and your conscience through talking, having give and take with somebody, then it's like an antenna that goes up when you feel like you're out of alignment. A little shadow, it's like, oh, I feel off. I'm going to talk about this, right? So I know that this is a really complex topic, but really what it comes down to, what we advise people in High Noon is just start connecting with people. Start there. That's like the snowball effect. That's what intuitively everybody knows that's what we need. We need more. Men need men, women need women. We need wise people in our lives. Connection. That's what we all need. And I would add to that, on the other side, is just less social media, because I have to mention that.
Shout out to no social media.
I would say less mindless media. That's how I would phrase it.
Yes.
Actually, no mindless media, ideally, and more connection. And that's like the gateway to resolving a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So your escape, your desire to want to escape, is fueled by a source of discomfort. That discomfort can be coming from your mind because your thoughts are working against you. It could be coming from your heart, like difficult emotions, unresolved feelings. Be coming from your body. For some people, honestly, it's just a sick body or an unwell body, a body that is suboptimal. And be coming from your spirit. It's lacking in connection to its purpose, lacking of connection to truth, right? Maybe you haven't prayed, maybe you haven't done 100K in a while. Lacking of connection to people. So when you look at what is the source of discomfort in my life, it's a great point to start at. And then you build on top of that. But for a lot of people, they try to resolve the problem, the expression of the problem, which is porn, masturbation, without understanding where the source of discomfort is coming from. So try to trace it back. Just like I had a friend who was a Roto-Rooter guy. And he'd every time he'd go to a new client's home, he'd bring out the snake. It's like this electrical thing that goes to try to find the source of clogging that's creating this backup in your system. Same with us. We got to bring out our metaphysical snake and start looking for the source of discomfort and start addressing that head on, and to know that there is a solution. There is a door open for this problem. So I hope that helps, guys. I mean, I feel like we could have done a lot more specific examples, of which there are plenty. But I mean, before we started recording, one that I was thinking of is like the idea of PTSD, and that, soldiers would come back from war completely traumatized, and there's no known explanation for that. There was no awareness, and then there's definitely no word, there's no label. So because there is no awareness and there's no label, then there's no solution. And now we're living in an era when it's really clear that, we can label porn as not the problem, but the result of a problem, which is discomfort. And we can kind of label that. We can see the whole thing much more clearly. Before, it was not clear, is porn good or bad? We just kind of morally, it was not so good. We all kind of knew that. Probably shouldn't, but is it that bad? Now it's very clear. It's very clear. It's a giant distraction to all of the things that you want in life. And the longer you spend over there in pornland, the worse you feel about yourself. So that's labeled. So now it's just a matter of figuring out what takes you there. And that's discomfort. That's a desire to want to escape. So if you need help unpacking that, please reach out to your mentor. Please reach out to your facilitator. Reach out to us. Reach out to somebody. Because like Benji was saying, that's how this all starts, is in connection with other people. That's the antidote to addiction, is connection. So we hope this helped. If you have any questions, please let us know. You got something else, Benji? You look like you got something else.
No, it's good. I could just hear my kids talking still at 11:30 p.m. So I'm going to...
Oh, you got to evict them.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you, everybody. See you later.
Yeah.
Here's another reminder about the 24-hour podcast. You can hear about stuff, right? You can hear about it. Doesn't mean you're going to do it. It takes people a lot of coaxing and cajoling in order for them to do anything these days because we're so inundated with all this stuff. But guess what? This will be worth it. If you want the world to reflect your values, and you have heavenly values, then we need to have more conversations. And it needs to be international conversations. And that's what High Noon is all about. So tune in to this podcast, show up, commit, write to us and tell us which section are you going to come to? Which one are you really excited about? Show up, be there. You can be accountable. I don't know how to say this. You can let us know and we'll keep you accountable. Holy moly, that was tough. So I'll see you there.